glad that you all join me for this talk on sexual ableism. And one more, let me give you a bigger view of the slides. Everyone can see those.
Yes,
Okay.
can everyone see? Yes.
Great. Okay. So I am Kathy O'Connell. I'm a licensed mental health counselor here in New York State. I'm also a certified rehabilitation counselor. Right now, I run a company called Rating Abilities. However, Rating Abilities is closing at the end of the year, and I'm beginning a new company called Relatability, just for a frame of reference. And I specialize in dating and relationships for people with disabilities. And I will tell you more about me in a second. But let's begin with what this talk is about. Sexual ableism. I refer to sexual ableism as the social discrimination that people with disabilities feel by being perceived as inferior in dating and relationships simply because of the presence of a disability. And we have probably all heard on some form, whether it's actually said or implied to us, we're quote unquote not relationship material. What they're really saying, and we all know this, is that because of our disability, we're not perceived as potential partners. And that's what we're going to look at today and begin to dismantle. So, as I said, sexual ableism is a social discrimination. And I think for the most part, even though it's said sometimes, I think for the most part, it's an unspoken discrimination, but it's something that many people with disabilities feel. And it's a prejudice from others, it's a discrimination, but it can leave us with a lot of internalized beliefs about feeling undateable, undesirable, and unworthy of love. So, why I got into this area of work is from my own story, and I, as you can tell, am someone with the obvious disability, born with cerebral palsy. It affects my fine and gross motor coordination, my speech, and for years I tried dating, and there were moments when I was somewhat successful. I had a long-term relationship at one point, but it wasn't really healthy. And when we broke up, I didn't want to date for a long time, but I always had within me this desire, dream to find a partner. And I know that's not everyone's dream, but it was my dream to eventually find someone that I could share my life with and hopefully have children. And but I kept running into I would go out on the first date, never hear from the person again. So and I'm a mental health counselor, so I will work on myself and what this was doing to my confidence. And finally, I got to the point where I said, and this was like 20 years ago, I was dating, and people were not talking about ableism, about dating, about relationships. Then, even though it was only 20 years ago, like they are now. So I did not have a lot of resources to try to figure this out. But finally, I got to the point where I'm like, okay, you know what? On the first date, I need to ask them how they're doing with my disability. Because even though I would put it in my dating profile, no one talked to me about it, and I did not feel confident to bring it up on the first date. So I go out on this one date, and I finally work up the nerve after dinner to say, "So, how are you doing with me having a disability?" Big tears well up in his eyes, and he whispers, "I'm so uncomfortable." And I want to literally crawl under the table and just have everyone go away. But remember, I mentioned I did work on myself. And Aaron, just so you know, I see two people in the waiting room. I had done work on myself. So I knew, okay, if I crawl under the table, nothing good will come out of that. So I take a deep breath and I go, well, I had cerebral palsy and I have it for my whole life. And let me tell you what will make me a good partner. So we talked for a little bit, and I left from that date not knowing if I would ever hear from him again. And the next night, I received an email from him saying, "Ugh, I really don't know if I can date someone with a disability, but you're pretty confident in who you are, so I at least need to get to know you." Well, that was 18 years ago, and short story is we got married 2 years later because as he got to know me, he could see that how worthy I was of being a lifelong partner. And the first few months we dated, I would always remember I'm a mental health therapist, so I like to check in with people. So we would go out on a date, and when the date was over, I would go, so how are you doing with getting used to my disability? And he would say, um, I, I, I'm okay, I'm not sure. And then he would go, so what are you doing next weekend? So I knew that things were progressing. And what my story, by the way, that says our son many years ago, he's a teenager now, but we've been married 17 years and we have one son. And not only did my life change because of this, but my whole work changed because for me, so much about dating with any different. It's about your own mindset, your self esteem, and your confidence level. And really, if you think about dating isn't just a skill set. And if you learn particular skills, you're likely to be successful. So now in my work, I help other people with disabilities with that skill set, developing the skills. And I also train professionals in the disability field of how to support people with dating and relationships. And then, sure, I don't need to tell any of you that that is a real lacking piece in services that many services and professionals that don't have the resources to support someone in dating and relationships. So, Aaron, I do see there's something in the chat, but I'm going to trust that you're going to let me know if I need to answer.
Yes, people are just saying thank you for sharing your story, Kathy, and that they liked your story.
Okay, and thank you. Thank you. So, let's look at understanding sexual ableism. Because what I'm curious about and what drives the work I do is how sexual ableism affects you as a person. Because if you look at any discrimination, whether it's racism, homophobism, it always impacts the person who is discriminated against in terms of their mental health. Not that it causes mental health, but it can affect how you're feeling emotionally about yourself and what you're believing about yourself. So, in particular, for people with disabilities, sexual ableism can cause a belief in unworthiness it can impact how we are in relationships. It reinforces stigmas in societies, and it can create barriers to love. And there are four main ways that sexual ableism shows up. It can show up in society, and we all know that because we don't see enough people in media with disabilities in general, let alone being portrayed as lovers and partners in movies and TV shows. It shows up in dating culture by how people don't really address seeing someone with a disability as worthy, by ghosting people, by fetishizing people, by saying mean, awful comments. So that's how it shows up in dating culture and our own minds. I mean, it's very human to hear these terrible things that are said or how people treat you or even how they ignore you and don't see you and not have it do something to our beliefs about ourselves, our self-worth, our confidence. And then that's the awareness is, how inclusive are we in the society when it comes into people with disabilities in dating? I do think it has begun to change quite a bit, but I think we still have a long way to go with that. Okay, and then as I mentioned before, as a mental health counselor, I can really see how sexual ableism affects relationships and mental health because it is hard to have the duality where you dream and desire a partner and love, and then you encounter so much social discrimination about that and so many negative attitudes about that it can really lead to feeling very vulnerable in relationships, having poor boundaries because you so want someone to love you, you may want to do whatever it takes for them to love you back. It can lead to depression, isolation, to just so much in the view. It can obviously lead to a lot more factors for people. But here's the truth. And here's what I feel we all do as a disabled community is that when we show up in dating and in expressing our needs and desires, we are teaching society that sexual ableism is a lie, and worthiness, our worthiness, is the truth. Sexual ableism is a social construct. I mean, in a way, think of how, in general, people struggle with, oh, only beautiful people, quote unquote, beautiful people, thin, blonde, whatever, people get to date and they have romance. How that myth has been out there for centuries. And that's a lie. And the same is true about sexual ableism. We, people with disabilities, are viable, worthy partners for life, for intimacy, and right now I feel it's our job to teach society that's the truth by going for what you dream in your own life, whether that's casual dating, getting married, having a family, whatever it is. By you going for your dream, that's how you teach people that sexual ableism is a lie. Now, I'm a big one for giving people tools to do action they can take to address the problem. And I'm going to give you 4 pillars of taking success. And then you go through all of them. And then at the end, you're going to get a resource to help you with this. But the 4 pillars, the things that you need for taking success. And this is why I really look at things as a skill set that anyone can do. We just need to give people the tools to do them. So first one is self-esteem. And you know what, before I begin that time I'd say it's eventually with self-esteem and confidence. You may very well feel like you have good self-esteem, good confidence in general in your life. But when it comes to dating, that may be a different matter. I know for me, when I was single, I was always confident, always had good self-esteem. But then if you ask me to express my interest in someone romantically, well, my self-esteem and confidence went right down the drain because there's that extra layer of vulnerability that we have when we're in dating and romantic situations. So, self-esteem first pillar. Feeling good about yourself, being able to identify your worth. Second one is confidence, believing in yourself, believing that you have what it takes to be a good partner, make someone happy, that you are confident in that. Then we go on to having a plan. How are you going to go about dating? And today, with all the different apps and choices, it can feel overwhelming. Well, how do I want to go about dating? And then lastly, and that's probably most crucial, is follow through. I would say that dating and relationships are a lot of work and they require a lot of energy. And unfortunately, we can't leave it to magic. We gotta do the hard work of taking action, following through, being consistent, even when we're not getting the results that we want right away. Okay, so we all know that self-esteem matters and not. But as I talk about the slide, think of it specifically in dating. So understanding your worth, your value, and really having a good knowledge of what you bring with who you are, your life experience to any relationships, and being able to identify your unique qualities that make you so lovable and desirable. And I believe that we incorporate this with our disability, and that our disability and the lived experience of having a disability just adds into our self-esteem. Now, I just have you think about that for a minute. You don't need to write or type into your phone or anything, but I'll just give you a minute to think about this. Take a moment and think about 10 things that you value about yourself. And maybe then think about your top 3. And don't worry, that what I give you at the end will also help you with that. But I do want you to take a moment just as we go through the rest of the workshop and think about 10 qualities that you have that strengthen your self-esteem. And I'm just gonna be quiet for a minute while you do that and take a sip of water. Okay, so hopefully you were able to get at least a 3 or 5 in, but just say that you're thinking about some good qualities and that you have about yourself as we move forward. Now we're going to talk about confidence. And I forgive me for the slide being very text heavy, but I did want to break down confidence for you. So it begins with knowing your value proposition. What do you bring to a relationship? So go back to the qualities I just had you do and see if you can work them in to say a dating profile. And by the way, I always tell people whether or not you're doing online dating, you need to do a dating profile because it's a good exercise in identifying what you bring to dating and what you have to offer. So once you have your value proposition, then confidence comes from integrating these qualities into your whole self and seeing yourself as a compilation of these qualities along with your disability. And an example would be I have cerebral palsy, which affects my ability. It's a big part of my life, but it doesn't define who I am. Now, some people may think that their disability doesn't define them, and that's great. But you want to come up with how you can introduce your whole self. And then you build evidence through action. And we'll talk a little more about action in a minute. But you may start by initiating conversations or even being flirtatious with someone. And then another component of confidence, and I work with people a lot on this, and that is reframing rejection. A lot of people don't want to even date for fear of rejection, for fear that they will be hurt, that they will be crushed. When in reality, yes, none of us want to be rejected for anything, but we're giving too much power to the idea of rejection. Rejection is really about someone else showing a preference. They are not defining you. They are not defining your work. They're just saying, I'd rather be with Susie versus Jill. And that it's a preference. We gotta not make it about ourselves. I know it's easier said than done, but it's something that really takes awareness that when we feel rejected, it's ultimately not about us. Okay, confidence. So the confidence cycle, as I call it, is the combination of feeling good about yourself, knowing your worth, your value, having some confidence to put yourself out there, And when you're able to combine the self-esteem and the confidence, that's when you attract people to you. I know that even before dating, when I would make friends, people would give me feedback of, I want to be friends with you because you're so comfortable with yourself and your disability. And I think that really allows other people to be comfortable with who they are, and then that attracts them to want to be around you. So that confidence cycle. Okay, on to the third component. A plan is not a wish. A plan may require hard work and making mistakes and doing things over and over. Have worked with a lot of people who want to date, but they only talk about wanting to date. They don't take any action. They don't try things. They don't know how they want to meet people. So nothing happens because they had no plan. So a plan for dating is begins with identifying what you want in a partner and what ways and what channels to go about dating align with your values. And like online dating, it's not for everyone. Some people want to meet people in person, some people want to be friends before they date people. You just need to determine what feels right for you. However, in a minute, that also puts you to go beyond your comfort zone. But a plan would look like, okay, I'm gonna try to go on 3 dates in this month or this quarter. I'm gonna decide to try 3 new dating apps and give yourself a goal that you can take action on, because by taking action, this will empower you in your dating journey. Okay, then we have follow through. So this is following through on the plan that you came up with, or if you realize the plan you came up with isn't working, you come up with a different plan. So follow through is also needed because when we come up with a plan to date, then we have a lot of emotions that may come up. And we may feel very vulnerable, very fearful. We may want to withdraw. And the ability to follow through pushes us forward to carry on that plan. So here's where we might look at obstacles or insecurities, and we may break them into manageable steps. So, for example, you may get ready to go on a dating app and you may think about, oh, what am I going to say if someone said something about my disability that is ableist and hurtful? Well, you may want to think about that ahead of time and how you might address that with people. You may also want to just embrace who you are, every effort you're making, and celebrate that. And so, when celebrate all your efforts to meet people, to break through ableism, to deal with comments and discrimination, to celebrate that as a win. Because, so like I said, every time you put yourself out there, you go for that dream you have of meaningful connection, you are tearing down the wall of sexual ableism. And that's really what we all need to do. Okay, so what a dating plan may look like is what you want from a relationship, what kind of relationship, what values matter to you, what are your deal breakers, what lifestyle do you want to build with a potential partner, how you want to go about meeting people, what dating apps you want to use, how do you want to meet people in person, say, do you want to volunteer or you want to meet new friends, and make a list of how you want to meet people. I always advise to people only take 2 or 3 venues. They're like 2 or 3 dating apps, 2 or 3 in-person venues, and don't overwhelm yourself with like 8 different ways to meet people. I do apologize if any of you can hear my dog barking in the background. I'm actually getting Amazon delivery because my dog hates the Amazon delivery people for some reason. Um, lastly, you want to address practical practical barriers like transportation. How will you get on dates? And do you need some support with you when you're on dates? How will you communicate about that? Accessibility, are the venues accessible? Communication, do you need anything to help you communicate? Those are some of the things you will want to be proactive about before a date. You also may want to set some dating goals for yourself so that you have something to work towards. You have a reason to take action because you said you want to meet 5 new people this month. So that will get you to take action. Um, and then working on those dating skills like conversation, how to handle disclosure about your disability, reading social cues, showing interest, and then thinking about what boundaries you might have while you're dating. So, if you do all that, you're gonna feel afraid because it feels vulnerable. And that's okay. Feel the fear and do it anyway. It's like going back to the date with my husband and him saying, I'm so uncomfortable and I wanted to crawl under the table, but I didn't. I felt the fear and I did it anyway. So feel the fear, don't let it stop you. So I'm gonna give you some simple things you can do this week. And like I said, in a minute you'll have access to something that will help you with that. But this week, try to commit to 3 meaningful actions that will guide you in trying to date more. Maybe start a journal so that you can reflect on your thoughts and feelings and watch yourself and how you talk about yourself when you think about dating and relationships. And finally, even though I did say find a way to date that is feels right for you, I'm also a big believer that we should get out of our comfort zone and try at least one new thing every now and then, because I think when we try new things, then that opens us up to even more possibilities. Okay, and that's a look at the time. We have 15 minutes, and that's great. I would love if you could scan or the QR code or go to that link down here in orange. It's going to take you to a 2-minute survey. Very easy. And when you get into the site, if you put in the word ableism, at the end of the survey, I created just for you all today. It's like a little workbook that will take you through everything I just talked about and help you with applying it to where you are at now with dating and give you some guidance in where to go from here with dating and relationships. So I will leave it up another minute, and I would really appreciate the feedback because I do a lot of talking about dating and relationships, and your feedback helps me to refine and relook at how I present things. Anyone need that on the screen anymore? Okay. And just open it up to any questions and answers. And I'm also going to share that if any of you want to connect with me, I'm at radiantabilities.com, although very soon in January it will become relatabilityllc.com. I do have a weekly podcast that goes into every angle about dating with a disability, called Dating, Relationships, and Disability. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn under Radiant Abilities or Kathy O'Connell. So if you want to connect with me, I would love to send out sharing the slides so that I can see your faces. Does anyone need any of the slides still up? You take that as a no. And are there any questions?
And Kathy, I see that Sandra put a question in the chat if you're ready.
Yeah. Hang on one sec. Let me open the chat. Okay. For some reason, why is it giving me the chat?
I can read it also.
That would be great. I don't know why, but when I click the chat, it's not opening for me.
No problem. So Sandra is asking, she says you had two different slides, one for confidence and one for self-esteem. For me, these two are the same. How and why would you differentiate confidence and self-esteem?
Because they are two different things, and because self-esteem is how you feel internally, and confidence is what you project outwardly based on what you feel internally. But I understand where you would think they're very intertwined. So, to take that a step further, to demonstrate, someone may feel very good about themselves, but have a hard time going into a room and meeting people and feeling secure in doing that. But very good question. Very good. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions that they would like to ask Kathy before we start wrapping up? I know for me, the differentiation between self-esteem and confidence really helps because I feel like confidence for me is sometimes a fake it till you make it kind of a thing, and I project more confidence than I actually feel about myself. So I understand the disparity between confidence and self-esteem well because it's something that I'm constantly playing with when I'm interacting with other people.
Yeah. Yeah, and also I want to point out again that in general we can feel very confident or very high self-esteem in our life, but when it comes to dating, it can feel very different.
Yeah, that's really true.
any other questions or comments or?
I'm monitoring the chat if you would also prefer to type it instead of speaking.
And also, I would encourage everyone, if you can do that survey, to get the guide that I developed because it will really help you take everything I talked about and think about it and apply it to your own personal